In order to reclaim your masculine power and sovereignty over your own life, we're going to have to do some shadow work. And there's so many ways you can go about it. There's plenty of videos that talk about their own structures. I found for me this 4-phase system to work exceptionally well. And when I felt confident in the process to actually teach other people, they have seen success also. To kick things off with phase number 1, which is centering. This phase and the second phase are the absolute bedrock foundation for any effective shadow work process you want to go for, whether it's this one or a different one. And the reason being is because what centering actually does. And so centering, by the way, this is my own use of the word. I'll give you other examples to really hone in, define, and make sure we're on the same page. So the word centering comes from the Greek word kentron, which means, a couple things, but one of the things that means is sharp point. And the way I like to use this phrase is taking a sharp pointed stick, smacking it into the ground, and that is now fixed in place. Now, how this relates to you is before we enter into any sort of past work, trauma, anything of that nature, we need to make sure we are centered and solid within our frame. In other words, being in the eye of the storm. Where there is chaos happening, but you are absolutely grounded. Now, different words to describe this in Sanskrit would be bindu, which means singularity. Or the Dharma, which signifies grip, holding your mind in one place. And the reason why this phase is absolutely crucial is because let's imagine it also from a combat perspective. So I've done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for over 10 years, probably 14 years now. And when we're engaging in a role, right, in a grappling match, when you're outside of your balance, your structure, your overall frame, then when someone is attacking you or when you are trying to attack them, it's very easy to destabilize your balance. It'll be easy for you to fall over, easier for you to make the wrong step and trip over yourself. And then therefore now snowballing you into a feeling of being clumsy, now you're feeling awkward, everything just gets derailed. So before we actually initiate the offense, you have to make sure you are in structure, everything is aligned, then you take action. And to further elaborate the point, we're going to get into phase 2, which is the audit. Scratch that, I meant the observer. The audit is the one after this one. The observer state combined with phase number 1 is going to be you within your frame. So this is you right here. And anytime we're now going to be engaging in this practice, emotions are going to come in heavy. Now, the emotion will depend on you, right? It's a personal flavor. But when the emotion of, let's say, for example, shame comes in, or envy, that word was spelled completely wrong, envy, we can have guilt, hate. These emotions, when they come in, they're going to suck you out of your frame. At least they're not trying to do that, but that is just a natural consequence of doing this type of practice. And so what it's going to try to do is drag you out. And if you are not fixed in place, it will drag you out. And what that looks like is you will get now fully immersed in that emotion. And instead of seeing it as something that is happening to you, you think it is now you. You think when you feel hate, you are a hateful person. And therefore you feel guilt about being hateful. Or you will just feel a sense of anger. Now you are an angry person. And then you get lost in that trail and you run into fantasies now, thinking about all the things you want to do with that hatred. And so it pretty much all it's doing is distracting you. And you get sucked into that ruminating state. And then you're never really going to go anywhere. So the observer is acknowledging beforehand that while I'm centered, when these emotions come in, I'm going to be fixed in that center pull, holding on. So when they try to pull me away, I'm going to do my absolute best not to engage with it as someone who thinks that's what they are. An anger emotion comes in, that's fine. Tell yourself, this is an emotion that I'm feeling. It is not a representation of who I actually am. I call both phase 1 and 2 combined as the hero stance. Now, I have this way more in detail in my guide down below, so go ahead and download it to get more of the information. But the hero stance is what I always say beforehand, before you actually enter into a shadow work practice, to establish it to be more productive and effective, rather than something you get into and then you end up saying, well, what the heck was the point of that? It sucked. All I felt was just getting thrown around all over the place with my emotions and completely lost track of the purpose. Now we can actually go to phase 3, which is the audit. Buckle up, because we're about to get into the trenches now. Who, what, when, where, and how. You will be asking yourself these questions, obviously, in a private environment, ready to dive in, or in a collaborative group, like a community, which, by the way, down below, I got a link for my waitlist, building the Sovereign Brotherhood community, where guys come together who want to establish sovereignty in their life, to break free from the chains of their past. But not only just that, but to also tap into the golden shadow, the parts of your potential that you don't feel or believe you can access, but you absolutely can. I've done this whole process alone, and it took me a very long time. And once I actually applied my methods to other individuals and seen the progress move so much faster, I thought, well, why not just do it as a group? So if that interests you and you want to know more about it, just click the link down below. Who was involved? So let's say you have a very gut reaction to abandonment. So anytime you are in a relationship and you crave marriage and you want to have a family, but the feelings of abandonment, that presence, that energy comes in and is overpowering, and you're not really sure what's going on. Maybe you have some ideas. So who is involved? Whenever you ask, who is it that potentially influenced this emotion? What happened? So what is it that happened, perhaps, in your past, that caused this to begin the snowball? Typically, just so you know, it ends up being between the ages of anywhere from like 4 or 5 years old all the way up into your early teen, late teen years. That is where the majority of yourself is being, of your psyche is being developed. And it doesn't really begin to crystallize until about 25 years old. And so those early periods are when you're the most susceptible and you are the most in the adaptive state. You're adapting to your household environment. When did this happen? So speaking on what I just said. So what age were you? That's a question you can ask yourself. What age? Where did this happen? Was it with your family? Was this at school? Was this with relatives? And finally, with how did this affect you? Be very descriptive with this part, because the more in detail you get, the better it is. And in fact, as you're getting detailed, if there's parts of you that you start to feel coming in and saying, oh, let's not go there, well, that's exactly where you're going to go. And that's the idea. So whenever you feel resistance during this practice, that's where you enter. It is absolutely crucial. That's the whole point of it, is to experience discomfort and building comfort within that discomfort. Now, all this would be for nothing if not for the very last phase, which is the somatic release. This phase in particular, I find the majority of men stop. They halt their practice up until phase 3, and then that's it. And where they halt it is in the intellectual phase. I'm going to spell it wrong, but you get what I'm saying, intellectual phase. What I mean by that is, I've worked with a lot of men, even this was something I've done, I'm guilty of it as well. Once you are, let's say, over time, and again, this will take time, don't assume that your first shadow work experience, if it is your first time, will happen right away. Those that have done this for a little while already know that. But as you go through your months and maybe perhaps a year of shadow work, you will over time build more and more context and be able to see more and more of what it is that's been your emotional knot. Abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of failure. And we tend to stop once we say, I know what's going on. I understand why I do X, Y, and Z. And that's where it halts. But if you stop there, that is nothing but just intellectual knowledge, but it is still somatically stuck. It is still in your body. And there's a book, do I even have it here? I do. So this book, a lot of you guys already probably know about it, The Body Keeps a Score. It talks a lot about how individuals who experience trauma in their early years, if they've repressed that memory heavily, they may, consciously kind of forget about it, but it is locked in their body. People will have experiences of gut pains, stomach pains for no reason. There'll be nothing there. Or lower back pains, knee pains, and they're wondering what the hell is going on. Or they'll have like random fits of anxiety, random fits of panic and fear. Even those who intellectually recognize what it is that's been holding them tight and keeping them stuck, they still have not released it from their body. So let's say you are someone who's had an abandonment issue. Perhaps whenever these thoughts and emotions come up, even when you intellectually know about it, perhaps you'll feel a very, very heavy sensation inside your chest, which perhaps gives you anxiety, gives you fear, and you can't explain what's going on. Maybe it's a feeling of pressure, elevated heart rate. One of the videos actually that I made where I was working with Victor, he actually, when we were doing the practice with him, the centering practice, he was beginning to say that his hands were starting to get a little clammy, a little shaky. So you can have all sorts of different experiences. And the most important thing is to pay attention to it. You now want to stay in it. Because by staying inside this discomfort, you are telling your nervous system that, you know what, it's okay. We are fine. We are able to actually move through this. And I call this massaging out. You basically have to massage out the tension. Honestly, it's nice to think of it as like a muscle. You go to a massage therapist, you have a tightness in your bicep from overusing it. And what do? They just slowly break it down. Does it get released 100% that first visit? No. And it's the exact same thing with this. It won't happen its first visit. You have to repeatedly do this over and over again. And the challenge will obviously escalate when you're outside of, let's say, your private environment with yourself or in a group community with other men doing this. When you get into an environment where you're now in a relationship and these emotions of abandonment come up, that is where the real challenge will begin. And I don't want to go into that too much, but just for you out there who are dealing with abandonment, and you're in a relationship, express it. You have to communicate as much as you can. Communicate your discomfort with your partner. This was a little bit off tangent, but I just felt like throwing it in there. Now, shadow work is all fine and dandy. Even if you apply these 4 phases, you're going to see tremendous results. But you also want to know where you can go wrong, because making a mistake during shadow work can be a massive setback, and in some cases, it can make your problem even worse. And so in order for you to know how to avoid those mistakes, subscribe, watch the video I'm going to upload on Thursday, and that's going to go into some of the common mistakes I found in myself that set me back for a number of years, and then the mistakes that I've noticed other people do that I've now learned from them and applied to my own practice. So hit that notification bell. This way you do not miss it. Thank you very much, everybody, and I will see you on the next video.